Hello and welcome to this episode of the Practical Creative Podcast, where I talk to my guests about the how and why of creativity. And in this season of the Practical Creative, I've been exploring the idea of play, why it's important, and how we can incorporate more into our own lives and practices. One of the reasons I chose to make play the focus of this season stems from a personal interest. In my creative practice as both an actor and an artist, I know that I generally do my best work when I can incorporate a sense of play into what I do. I find that it offers a sense of flow. It becomes easier to generate fresh ideas, and overall it makes the process more enjoyable, regardless of whether I'm working alone or as part of a larger cast or team. But I've often found myself uncomfortable using the word play to describe who I am and the work that I do, because the connotations can be so negative. There can be a sense that you can't be playful and professional, or you can't be both playful and mature. So it was fantastic to speak with such a wide range of guests, working in so many different disciplines, each of whom have offered fresh perspectives on the role and use of play, and even a vocabulary for expressing how vital play is in all aspects of our lives. And if you haven't listened to all my guests in this season, here's a really quick recap. I started this season by talking with Charlie Hohen, who's an author and filmmaker, and he shared a deeply personal story that illustrates the power of play and how he used it to help restore his own mental health. And it's really genuinely compelling, so I encourage you to listen to that. I spoke with the play futurist Yashim Kunter, who talked about play as a means of connecting with the world, and not just the physical environment around us, but also with other people within it. I spoke with Mary Robinette Kowal, who works as both a puppeteer and a science fiction author, and she shared with me practical strategies that she uses to help manage depression as a creative, and she also flagged the idea of doodles, which I'll come back to later. There was Dr. Mike Rucker, who brought a different perspective, rooted in his research into workplace wellness, and he shared a systematic approach to increasing the amount of fun you have in your life, and also how to structure living a deliberate life. Sandy Brown, who I now refer to as the bravest artist I know, because she's committed to a creative practice that is based on not knowing, on genuinely not pre-planning what her work is going to look like, and not predetermining what's going to come out the other end of the process, and just enjoying the ride. And we ended with a conversation with Magnus Goranson, who works at LEGO as design director of the Creative Play Lab. And we spoke about how the company encourages a culture of play, as well as Magnus's own discoveries around play and creativity. Looking back across the series, there were so many takeaways that came from these conversations, and I'd love to share a few with you. A lot of the conversations brought out ideas that work around incorporating play into your daily life. And this first came up with Charlie Hohen, who talked about how you view your experiences. He talked about the possibility of looking at work as work or looking at work as play. One perspective means that work is something that's drudgery, that's arduous, something you just have to get through and come out the other side. And the other is looking for opportunities for play or fun or joy within that experience. And Charlie also left us with a fantastic challenge, which was to write a play history. Really simply, that's spending 10 or 15 minutes to write down all the things you used to do as a child just for fun. That you just did because you enjoyed doing them, not because someone was making you do them or encouraging you to do them. You did them for their own sake. And then just trying to incorporate some of those activities for 30 minutes in the next week and see what happens. Yashim Kunter also spoke about the kinds of filters with which we view the world around us. And she talked about how if you choose to look for the negative, the difficult, the uncomfortable, you'll start to see more of that. But if you choose to look for the joyful, the playful, even the magical in the world around you, you'll become more aware of those moments. And Dr. Mike Rucker suggested creating a time log, which is simply writing down how you spend each hour of any given week, and then looking through that and looking for those moments, those activities that give you joy, that give you pleasure, and see how much time you're spending doing that and where that occurs in your week, and whether or not you might be able to sprinkle that more evenly across the week instead of, for example, putting it all into the weekend. And this is part of a larger idea that Mike introduced me to, which is that of living a deliberate life, which is essentially just being clear about what you value and creating a structure to help encourage incorporating more of that into your life. And he has a fantastic example, which is the Live Life Love Project, which is going to run over 25 years. And what he's doing is giving himself 3 goals every 3 months. So those are to have conversations with 2 thought leaders in areas that he's interested in, to give back in some way, often to charity, and to have exciting, life-affirming experiences. And so by the end of that project, he's going to have had so many fantastic conversations, so many great experiences, and he's ensuring that he's continuing to move forward in the direction that he chooses instead of drifting off course and falling into habitual patterns. In addition to looking at how to incorporate more fun and more play into your daily life, there are some also really practical ways of pulling more play into your creative practice, whatever your medium. And there were so many exciting ideas on this front. The first was to look at the materials that you engage with, the materials that you surround yourself with. Yashim Kunter talks about how, as humans, we are unconsciously conceptual thinkers, and one way of accessing that capacity is through the sense of touch. So when she runs workshops in a corporate context, she makes sure she uses balloons and Play-Doh and finger paints, really fun, playful materials that the participants have to engage with. And this encourages a sense of fun, a sense of play, which leads to greater ideation, greater communication, and an increase of energy in the space. And I think this is such a fun and such a simple way of incorporating more fun and more play into your environment. For example, the use of finger paints. How much fun does that sound? Instead of maybe doing some sketching or drawing of new ideas with a pencil on a sketch pad, taking a large sheet of paper and some colorful finger paints and getting rid of the tools entirely and using your hands directly into the paint and smooshing that around and seeing what happens and see how that might liberate a sense of freedom and play and exploration. I think it just sounds so inspiring, and I can't wait to give it a go myself. But this idea of incorporating materials or looking at the kind of materials you surround yourself was also echoed in my conversation with Magnus Goranson, who works at Lego. He was talking about how at Lego they surround themselves with toys. So at every opportunity, there is something that you can grab and engage with and play with, either with the object itself or with a colleague. And they extend this to the colors they use and even the furniture that's in the space. Everything there is signaling that they are in a space that's dedicated to creative and productive play. Another concept that came out was that of celebrating mistakes, and I find this so exciting. So Yashim Kunter talked about how mistakes are an integral part of getting to perfection, and that if we just jump to perfection, if we just try to achieve perfection, we're missing out on all that information and all that fun that we can have by making the mistakes that are required to get to perfection. And that if we don't celebrate them, as she puts it, if we don't enjoy those mistakes, then we're missing out on a lot of that process. Mary Robinette Kowal also talks about mistakes, and she refers to them as happy accidents. The example she gave was picking up a puppet, a new puppet that she hasn't worked with, and trying stuff out with it. And as you go, things happen accidentally, that it might flop a particular way, and you realize, oh, when it's in that position, it reads as happy or sad or sleepy or whatever emotion, but that may not have been an intended outcome, but being vigilant and alert for when something happens by accident and what potential value could be extracted from that, what potential lesson could be learned from that. And if you're feeling really brave, you can try going to the point where mistakes don't even happen. For example, in the process that Sandy Brown talks about, in her creative process, she goes into such a pure state of not knowing that the process is everything, and that what comes out at the other end is not a mistake. Whatever happens in the moment of creation is right, is the right outcome. So there are no mistakes in the outcome. As she puts it, if you are genuinely in a state of not knowing, genuinely not predetermining what is going to happen, whatever does happen is valid. And even as she puts it, is not only valid, but it's sacred. And there's a lot tied up in this, in that Sandy's talking about accessing a very intuitive, creative spark, creative expression. And so that whatever results is a reflection of you and should therefore be accepted and viewed with a sense of curiosity and not judgment. And Sandy does a fantastic job of expressing this, so I really encourage you to listen to that episode if you haven't already, because it is absolutely fantastic and incredibly inspiring. And another idea is that of doodles. And this came up both with Sandy Brown and Mary Robinette Kowal. They both use the same word, which is doing doodles. And I love this idea. To my mind, it's like a sandbox for ideas. It's a space, it's giving yourself space to explore and play without worrying about the consequences, without putting the pressure of having to have a clear outcome or having something concrete that comes out the other end. So Mary Robinette does this with writing exercises, just trying out different ideas, seeing what happens without the pressure of having to have a finished scene or some great dialogue by the end of that doodle or that doodle time. And Sandy Brown does the same thing. She will set herself a short time frame, for example, 20 minutes or 30 minutes to quickly do something or many things. And she'll make many maquettes. But she's working in a spirit of exploration and not expectation, of observing and watching what happens and looking at what the result is and examining that with wonder and curiosity and not judgment and without any weight attached. And I think there's something wonderful about intentionally creating a space to explore and not worrying about the outcome, of almost relieving yourself of the requirement to have an outcome and just see what happens. This has been such a fun and exciting and challenging and stimulating and encouraging season, and the conversations have been absolutely delightful. And if I were to sum it up in just 3 thoughts, I'd leave you with these. 1, give yourself permission. Give yourself permission to play, to explore, to not know what's going to come out the other side, to enjoy the process and that alone, going back to that sense of just doing something for the sheer joy and the fun of it. 2, that creativity and play are like muscles. The more you do them, the stronger they get. So this is me encouraging you to go out and flex those muscles and get them as strong as you possibly can. And 3, be curious. Because that's the essence of play, is wondering what happens if, and then going and finding out. And what an exciting adventure that is going to be. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, stay curious. There. Thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode of The Practical Creative. If you'd like to learn more about my guests, you can visit the Practical Creative website at thepracticalcreative.life, where you'll find links to all of their work and the previous episodes. And if you're looking for something to stimulate your own creative practice, check out the Creative Challenges page. You can also sign up to receive my challenge packs, where I put all the challenges from my guests in seasons 1 and 2 of the podcast into downloadable PDFs. Just head over to the website and check it out. And while you're there, be sure to have a look at the resources page, where I've compiled links to all the materials and services referenced by my guests, including books they've written on creativity and business, online courses, Facebook groups, and much, much more. And if you've enjoyed this episode of the Practical Creative Podcast, it would be fantastic if you would subscribe to the show or share it with a friend or even leave a review on iTunes. And I'd also genuinely love to hear what you found to be exciting or inspiring or even challenging about these conversations. You can find me on Instagram at Practical Creative. Until next time.